Somebody else just join us?
Recording has been started, it seems.
Okay. So it shows that to you. So welcome everyone to the first edition of the resume workshop for 2023. We have Pooja and Ariba so far. We were expecting some other people with resumes to workshop, but since we have an hour, usually tops are based on the work that's needed. We could possibly do 2 or even 3 resumes in an hour for you guys to get some stuff. So let's start this by giving you a starting point for all this information. So the following slides are what I'd like to call design principles. So considerations. You guys see this okay? Pooja and Ariba?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's
All right,
visible.
cool. Awesome. Eduardo. Oh, Eduardo's on as well. So Eduardo, you were the first resume. Since you're on, Ariba's going to be number 2. So if you could please queue up your resume while I cover some of this groundwork stuff. So
Good.
proceeding to good to have you, man. I was worried about you.
Yeah, I apologize. I went a little late.
No worries.
All on me.
Yeah. So considerations, job search, just in general, is an art. Have you been through some of this material, Eduardo, for the resume stuff? Or is this the first time that you're seeing this as well?
I went through the workshops last time, but I don't believe I saw these
Okay.
slides. So it might be my first time.
Yeah, good. So I like to make it as a starting point, but I also like to make these sessions interactive. So when we say job search is an art, the whole way of the way that you approach this, sure, there are best practices, but there could be practices that work for some people that don't work for other people. I could give you a suggestion. Julie could give you a suggestion. BJ could give you a suggestion. And sometimes it's dependent on, various factors. So always take information with a grain of salt, meaning take it into consideration, but it's not the rule of thumb. So that's the first thing that I wanted you guys to know. It's an art such that if you find something that works, do more of that. If you find something that doesn't work, even if somebody's saying that, they could swear that that was the best thing that they could do in their job search, if it works for them, but it doesn't work for you, then stop it. Do something that works for you, is all we're saying. So the second check mark that you're seeing out there is it's your resume. And I would like to extend that to saying it's your LinkedIn, it's your cover letter, it's your job search, really. So I'd like to commend all of you who are on this call right now, or even listening to the recording of this call, because you're obviously taking responsibility for the outcome that you have to find jobs. So next slide. Did you guys have any comments about what I've shared so far?
No, I
Comment?
think we are good to go.
All right.
I do
Good.
have one comment.
What's the comment?
It's that I always tend to forget that it is my resume. I tend to think that I want to make this resume look good to the hiring manager and all that. But then I also forget that there's things I like, things I don't like. And a resume is like the first stop that hiring managers see. So it's the first place that really they get to see who you are.
Correct.
And so giving a first impression of who you are is really important also on putting on a resume too.
Yes. And I'd like to extend what you just shared there, Eduardo, in that you, from the standpoint of the person writing the resume, is that you want to make a good first impression. One of the things that students, or actually not even students, anybody who writes a resume for that matter, any professionals out there, there's one component that I always have to remind them of when they're thinking of the best light that they want to put themselves in. And what do you think that is that they're forgetting? You guys have any idea? No idea. So I'll give you the answer. The answer is they forget to think of the resume or anything that they do in the job search for that matter from the perspective of the reader, from the other person. Because we always think of what we think is good, But sometimes we forget to think that the reason we're doing all of these activities, our resume, our LinkedIn, preparation for the interview, is really truly about the other person. So I don't know if that shifted anything for you guys, but it shifts for a lot of people when they take a look at, resume writing or anything that has to do with job search. Any comments about what I just shared? I know, Eduardo, you and I have had some of those conversations in the interview. So the interview being an integral part of the job search as well, you realize that I've always kind of been stressing that you always, whatever answers that you have, has to be from the perspective of the listener in that case. For a resume, from the reader of the resume. Make sense?
Yep.
So the other thing that I wanted to point out to you guys, especially for the newer students that are listening to this recording, as students, we are very good at following rules. So when you take a look at a template, you want to make sure that people always put their complete information. It's very comprehensive. And oh, welcome, Ahmed. It's good to have you.
Yeah, hi, Bernie.
Hey. So going back to what I was saying from the templates, when you guys are given a template, people think that that is the rule, that it has to look that specific way. One of the things that you have to remember from the standpoint of a resume, different students have different backgrounds, have different experiences, have different education. And going back to Eduardo's point earlier, if we are putting ourselves in the best light, feel free to move stuff around in the resume that brings the best light to you. So the template, it's not a rule that it has to follow a certain sequence. It has to follow a sequence that's actually related to the next check mark that's out there. So questions for the people on the call right now. Let's talk about hiring managers or HR people. Question to you, do they have little time or do they have a lot of time?
A little time.
Little time, obviously.
They have very little time, right? So that is a very big consideration in what you always hear people talk about. Resumes have to be one page. Resumes have to be, bullet points, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is really addressing what we just said. The reality of today's world, especially in today's day and age, where it's very easy to upload resumes. Okay. Back in the day, it was much, much more archaic in how we did that. And they had less resumes back then than today. So if they're getting more resumes and the hiring managers are very, very busy, when you're presenting yourself in the best light, the other consideration that you have to take is that you give them the information that they need sooner versus later, which comes to the last bullet that we're talking about there. And it's also related to the first bullet. When we said the resumes are templates, you want to give them the information that's relevant to you or that brings you into a better light much, much sooner versus something that's later. So when I talk about this bullet, some students who've never done an objective or have never done a summary in their resume, I ask them the question that if a hiring manager is very busy, would you rather have them go through your entire resume looking for the information that they need, or is it better to give them the information that they need sooner versus later? And the sooner part suggesting that you have a summary portion, because that's where you can tell them, the highlights about you and kind of entice them with tidbits and information about you so that they read further on to your resume. Questions about what we've discussed? So consideration number 3 is what we were talking about earlier. This is what I was talking about, that we're so focused and giving the highlights about what we are, but sometimes we forget the relevance of the information that we're putting in the resume, such that we're thinking of the job description, that we're thinking of the hiring manager, such that it's not about the information being complete, because I get this a lot from students. They're like, oh yeah, I also did this. I also did this. I also did this. And my first question to them is that information relevant? If their answer is no, gone. It's not on the resume. If the information is relevant, then yes, because it's not about completeness. It's about the relevance of the information to the reader. What do you think the last check that you have out there? And I'll give you a little clue. It's kind of related to the summary.
I believe it's using some kind of number or saying some kind of a fact that can support your actions on, let's say, on a specific job,
Very
and
good.
tailoring it so that this fact not only is showing off what you accomplished for the company, but it's also saying what you could accomplish for this new company you're applying.
Company that you're applying to. Very good, very good. I like the way that you said that, Eduardo, in that the reason they would know that they want to hire you is, number one, if you have the experience, then you definitely want to highlight it. And when you have the experience, there's a difference between just describing the experience versus calling out the accomplishments and the results that you did with that specific experience. So I guess that's why we highlight that out there, where I say accomplishments / results versus simply describing. So this is actually huge, and we'll probably run into some of this as we go through Eduardo's resume and then Ariba's. And if we have time, if for whatever reason we have another one, I guess I know Mohammed kind of volunteered that he wanted his resume on here. So sorry, Pooja, the people that I expected to have their resumes are on here, but we can talk some more about this. So questions before we proceed to, let's see, did I have anything else on this slide? No, this is the resume proper. I'm going to stop sharing. We'll have Eduardo share his resume, and let's take a deep dive into it. While we're waiting for Eduardo, any other questions or questions in general about what we've discussed so far? No questions. So here's what I'd like to do with this group workshop. So we have 4 people on this call right now. Previous sessions that we've had about these group workshops is they love the fact that they have the ability to look at somebody else's resume, so that some of the considerations that we spoke about earlier, sometimes it's hard to think of our own resume when we're so focused on our information, but some of the points could be clearer when we're looking at somebody else's. So instead of Bernie just giving comments to Eduardo, I would invite Pooja and Ariba and Mohammed to kind of like give their comments based on what we're seeing out here. So I'm going to open the floor really quickly. Eduardo, request if you could please slowly scroll down to your resume to give everybody a chance to see what you wrote down. And then I'm going to open the floor for people to give their first reactions.
Blue.
So very good. Okay. Very nice. You're doing great. So I see you put in some work already with the accomplishments and results. Nice, Eduardo. And then you have the achievements towards the end. And it's one, you got it in one page, right?
Yep.
Fantastic. So
I don't know if it's better to show you the previous iteration of this, because I know I did some of that
changes.
homework you mentioned previously.
Okay, just for the purposes of the other students, both on the call right now and listening to the recording, why don't we do that really quickly? Actually, no, hang on a second. Because you just shared this, there's some gut reactions that Pooja had, that Ariba had, and that Mohammed had based on this. Let's have them kind of give those gut reactions first, and then we'll go to your older resume.
Sounds
So questions from, reactions, please, from Pooja, Ariba, and Mohammed. What do you like about it? What do you think could be improved based on what you know, or even the considerations that we spoke about?
The summary part could be improved.
Summary. Can we see what you have there, Eduardo? Okay, so he put it under, okay, I kind of like saw this as a tagline. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't even think that that was a summary. So, okay, so Mohammed saying that the summary could be improved. Eduardo, other comments or general first impressions? Ariba and Pooja.
The experience part is good. Can you please scroll down? Okay, so you mentioned Office of Technology Services here. And I think it's OTS, like in the college, Illinois Institute of Technology. So maybe
Mhm,
you can mention there that you worked here on campus, like kind of
mhm.
different from the other experience, because that is professional experience, but this is on-campus experience. So that is what I noted.
Okay, so what's your suggestion there, Ariba, that Eduardo would replace Office Technology Services with Illinois Institute of Technology, or?
I mean, not Illinois. Sorry, let me repeat that. What I'm trying to say is, he worked there on campus. Like it is not a full-time professional job. It is like
Okay, gotcha.
part-time on-campus job. So do not mix it with the professional internship or the experience he had. That's what my
Okay,
point was.
okay, so he's saying with the mixing. I have a comment with that, but did you hear what Ariba just shared, Eduardo?
Yes, that I shouldn't
Oh,
be mixing.
That was
I
Pooja.
mean,
That was not me.
oh, that was Pooja. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess I have to open up my my screen here to see folks. Sorry, Pooja. Sorry, Ariba.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
guess the point that Pooja was making is to mix your, I like that suggestion from the standpoint of, because somebody obviously reading this doesn't know that it was an on-campus job, that it wasn't a full-time job. So I'm taking that, but I have a comment about mixing the experiences a little later. If I remind to address that, please remind me, Pooja. Other first impressions.
I really liked how you used percentages and numbers in experience.
Mm,
That's a good way to show achievements. Also, I don't know if it's like it's a USA thing or not, but I have seen that most people put their skills under education, so that it's the first thing that recruiters see, so that they
mhm.
know that these are the skills that you have before they go into the experience section. So I think it would be good if you put skills under the education section.
Under the education. So I have a question from Ariba's recommendation. By the way, guys, Ariba, she just graduated and she used to be part of our team as a peer career coach. So just FYI. So what Ariba's saying, she wasn't sure if it was a US thing where under education, and again, this goes back to the template, right? So here's a
Yeah.
question for the group. If I were a hiring manager, and what would be more important to me, the skills or the experience?
I think skills,
Hmm.
or maybe partially both, because experience also matters.
Hmm. No, but from the standpoint of what we said earlier, because they're very busy, right? What would catch your attention first? Is it the skills or is it the
Skills,
experience?
skills. Yeah, definitely
Okay,
skills.
it's definitely skills. Who else? Who else has the same answer, a different answer?
Experience.
Experience. Okay. So would you guys all agree that experience is the application of skills?
Yeah.
So from the hiring manager's standpoint, is it more important to have the skills or the application of the skills?
But most people don't have experience, for example, entry level.
Mm,
So if they
okay,
use skills, then they can.
so very good. So you just made the distinction out there. This is what I was talking about in a resume. It's really dependent on who we're highlighting, because different students have different things to highlight. And to the point that you just made, some students may not have the experience. So what we just learned in the discussion is if you have experience, experience is obviously more important than skills. If you're a student and you have totally no experience, skills is important to come first. So this kind of like comes into what we said earlier. The resume's look is really dependent on who we're featuring.
But like even if you are a fresh graduate, they expect you to have an experience in the form of projects and internships.
Correct. So that's yet another way to put experience, because when we say experience, and this is actually connected to what Pooja said earlier about Eduardo's putting the student technician, which was kind of like really a part-time job versus the rest of the other internship experiences, that they were different categories. So I'm glad you brought that up, Mohammed. So it's kind of a way based on the information that you're trying to highlight. And this goes back to that very first point that we talked about under considerations. all the information, all these perspectives that we're sharing here right now. And if you notice, people have like different theories about what works for them or what doesn't. That's why we're saying always take it with a grain of salt. At the end of the day, the opinion that matters is your comfort level, because like we said, this is your resume, this is your job search. You take responsibility as to how you present yourself. You take the information that everybody shared here, for example, into consideration, but at the end of the day, you make the call as to what that resume looks like. Very good discussion. I love it. Thank you for all your contributions. Other comments that we want to make here before I ask Eduardo to share his old resume.
So when we were talking about on-campus jobs, when I used to work as a PCC, some students have on-campus jobs that are not related to their field. So what
Yes.
we used to do is encourage them to add them in leadership and professional development, because you're
Yes.
obviously gaining soft skills from this.
Yes, very good suggestion, Ariba. So that could be a consideration that could be done for leadership. The other thing to consider in tandem with what you just shared, Ariba, is from the perspective of, because sometimes I've also seen resumes where it's too lengthy for the student. So adding yet another, in Eduardo's case, not a problem because he's already got leadership there. But sometimes, a student has to add that category. So there are ways around those things. And I guess those are the one-offs that you want to talk to a career coach about, or an opinion, to make the decision as to what your final resume looks like. So thank you, Ariba. Other comments?
And like mentioning language is necessary. Like
You're saying the language part that Eduardo has? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
So is that a question or a comment?
the question.
Okay, and your question was, is it necessary to include it?
Yes.
Okay. So let's hear what Eduardo has to say first about why he included it.
Yeah, of course. So I included it in just because I know it's a skill that I have. And even though it's not something that everyone looks into, especially in my field where engineering, it's all done in English, at least here in the United States, it's not something important. So if you wanted to save on that line, I can totally see why you shouldn't even include that. But
I like how you related it to the field that you're applying for, though. So I love the distinction you made, Eduardo.
Yeah. And I still remember this from another one of the career coaches, Lisa Montgomery. I was working with her a lot when making my resume. And she told me this, that the language, you only include it if you are completely sure that you can speak it with complete fluency. Or
Well,
that,
especially if you say fluent, right?
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
like if you mention it, make sure that you can prove that you can.
Yeah, or have an answer for it at least. Like, for example, I just had a student that I spoke to this morning. So if you take a look at the screen that Eduardo's sharing right now, where he says redesign resulting in external company sponsorship and a 20% engagement increase. The student that I just spoke to just before this, the interviewers actually said, how were you able to say that it was 20%? So the point I'm trying to make, just to the point that you just shared, Eduardo, about you better be fluent. If you said you were, is anything that you have in the resume, make sure that you have something to back it up, because you could be asked a question as to why you said 20% or why you said fluent. And fluent, obviously, you could just break out into your fluent Spanish during the interview if that was a requirement, right?
And I don't mind answering that question, like 20% engagement.
Yes.
We have...
No, I'm just saying you have to be ready. So that's good. I just want to make that point. And the reason it was salient to me was a student who came in for coaching just shared that during the actual interview, they asked them, okay, how did you know it was 20%? And they didn't ask the question only once, because the student kind of gave an answer. And then they said, yeah, how did you do this? So they had to back it up. So all I'm saying to you guys is we're obviously writing down accomplishments and results, but also be ready to have a way to answer it when they ask you to dig deeper into it. So very good. I like that you're ready to explain it, Eduardo.
Yep.
Other comments? I'm kind of like just doing a time check here just to make sure that we're not over. And do you want us to give a quick look for your other resume? Just a quick scroll, and then I want to go back into this to kind of to scrub it.
Okay. See, I'll try to make it quick. I don't want to take much time, especially since there's other people. I just want to show like the iteration process of what it went through this. So here's the. So let's share screen.
So just to prepare you guys while we're waiting, the first comment that happens to be at the top of Eduardo's resume is the summary. So we're going to go directly into that because we're going to try scrubbing it from top to bottom. Okay.
So
Okay. So it's interesting how you have what Ariba was suggesting, or was it Pooja, with the skills directly under education. So
yeah, and
I see
this
where
one
you,
doesn't
where you
really
came
have
from.
a summary.
I have a general comment though, based on you sharing this old resume. Is this a different font from the first one that you just showed us?
It's the same font, actually. I just
Really?
moved things around a lot. And
I'm
this
not sure, man. Gut reaction. This looks cleaner than the other one, so I don't know what that is. But that was my first reaction looking at this.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, FYI, okay? Because I was like, oh, this kind of like looks cleaner.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's obviously growth into it. Cool. Thank you for sharing this. Let's go back to your original and let's take a deep dive into Mohammed's comment about your very first thing on top. Other comments while we're waiting for Eduardo to share their resume again. Okay. So we said effective communicator and confident leader with strong organizational skills, dedicated and committed. Okay. I'd like to hear what Mohammed has to say, and anybody else actually, as to how this could be improved.
So like
Well-
mentioning the accomplishments, like how you got the technical and the hardware experience.
Okay.
Hmm.
Very good.
I just noticed the punctuation mistake. Full stop is not there after hardware experience. So little bit of punctuation and formatting could be improved also in the
Okay.
summary part.
Okay. Very good catches. So I'm going to go back to Mohammed's comment. Eduardo, do you understand why he brought up what he brought up?
I do not. I would like
Okay.
explanation. Yeah.
So let me direct that a little bit. So one of the things that we do, remember when we saw that wow factor in one of the considerations that we had earlier? I would assert that the stuff that you have out here, and it's not unusual, by the way, Eduardo, a lot of people do what you just did. They kind of say that they're an effective communicator, they're a confident leader with strong organizational skills, versus what Mohammed was saying, that if I told them what I accomplished as an effective communicator, what I accomplished as a leader. So I led the, deployment of blah, 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 et cetera, versus claiming that I'm a confident leader. Do you see the difference? You saying that you're a confident leader versus you saying these were the results. And I don't even have to say that I'm a confident leader, because by virtue of the results are saying that you are a confident leader. Are you kind of grasping what I'm talking
Yeah.
about?
Yes.
Okay, so let me share my screen really quick, and I want to go to for Pooja actually, because actually possibly Ariba.
Okay, you want me to show my resume now?
No. It looks like I wanted to share something really quick to that point for Eduardo, and then we could finish with that. But you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so I'm going to the LinkedIn group right now. I am going to the group. And then when you're in the group, the study guide is always a comment to any of the posts that we have out here. It's nice if you save it, but if you don't, just go to any post, and we normally put it down as one of the comments. In this particular case, it's about the index, so we didn't put a post, but If you need to find this index that you're seeing in the screen right now for the benefit of our listeners or viewers just watching afterwards, you want access to this, here's the study guide. And the way to find it is to find it in any comments. I am going to do a Control F and then find hashtag resume to go to the resume portion. And I want to call your attention to we have case studies. Let me show a case study number. Well, let me pick somebody kind of like a freshman, actually. All right, let's start with a freshman. So Eduardo, so think of your summary that you had on top versus Benjamin's a freshman, but I think this example is making the point as to what Mohammed just said. How is this different from what you had, Eduardo?
This one's using one of their own personal experience in a way, putting what experience would be into a summary instead, and using this experience to show what you accomplished for yourself, basically.
Right. So remember when we said earlier that hiring managers don't have a lot of time? So by having a summary that actually calls, in your case, you had a summary, but Mohammed kind of like called it out, saying that it could be done better, such that you could do something like Ben did in what you're looking at, in that you take a few of the things that really set you apart. In your case, you wanted to highlight your leadership. You wanted to highlight, what was the other skill that you were highlighting?
Communication, leader, and
Communication, right. Okay, so you want to highlight communication, you want to highlight leadership. Maybe it might be better to give an example of what you accomplished as a leader, what you accomplished as a communicator, versus just claiming, quote unquote, because I could claim anything. But in Ben's case, if you take a look at this, I mean, there's no question that they kind of did this. Is that making sense to you, Eduardo?
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody understand the point that we just tried to make?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So FYI, the reason I want to come to the LinkedIn group is when you go to the index, if you notice, actually, this is part of the resume homework. You guys may or may not know it, even for the listeners watching the recording, is you have 5 case studies that actually, to Eduardo's point, where he had an old resume and a new resume, you can get ideas and even more examples of students having come through career services, what we worked on, kind of like Eduardo tried to share. So you'd like take a look at the better portions of 5 case studies that are currently featured in the group. Pooja, did you know about this?
I opened this document, but I didn't get a chance to explore it, but I'm gonna walk through
Yes.
of the document.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why we like to have these workshops, because we have something that's true, like in Eduardo's case, it's very relevant, right? And then we kind of like taking that opportunity to bring everybody on the same page to see what resources are there for you. So the thing that I want to point out while we're on this, to what we're talking about, students usually like to describe what they're going through versus the accomplishments, or this results versus describing. I guess if you see my my cursor out there, I'm going to open up this thing that says career log and accomplishments. When you're thinking of accomplishments and results, this content can help you because I've highlighted it in bullets. What are accomplishments that you want to highlight? Dollars saved, workflow time reduced, process controls reduced, and this whole thing. Think of it, because people just say, let me give you an example. I could say, this is what students do. For example, that they say they were in this job and they swept the floor. That's the bullet that shows up in the resume. They swept the floor. What we're trying to put up here, instead of just saying that they swept the floor, I'd like to say that I led a team of 5 people who swept the floor, and we finished the task in 30 minutes versus the regular 2 hours. Which one was more impactful? Just by saying that you swept the floor, or by calling out the accomplishments and results? And obviously your answer is the latter. That's the whole point of this post out here, and that you're trying to highlight, not just describe, you're trying to highlight your results. Questions? I'm going to stop sharing. I want Eduardo to share his resume once again back to the top and see if he's got any questions. Otherwise, we could go. Eduardo, do you have a feeling of what you need to do for your summary?
Yes, I do.
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying, that the font is actually the same. You know what it is, Eduardo? It's because you compacted everything into one page. I think that's what's
Mhm.
catching my attention here. So
Yeah.
to that point, it's like the effective use of white space. So just general comments for you for white space, which you already did. We're going to clean this up a little. Where you say interests under education, here's a question for you, Eduardo, where you say computer hardware design, integrated circuit design, hardware, software, co-design. Is this something that's called out in the job description, or are you just putting it there as general information to let them know your interest? What was your
Currently,
reasoning?
as a general.
Okay, if it's general, I could take it out to kind of help with your white space.
Got it.
Make sense? And then the way you had comment, runtime legacy, 15%.
Bernie, I have a question here.
Go ahead, Pooja.
Okay, so suppose if he has done some certifications from any Udemy or LinkedIn from anywhere. So which section is the best section to mention that? The certification and the license that we hold, suppose hypothetically, if he has done that.
So question for you, Pooja. Is this certification in a topic that is required in the job description?
Yeah, like people do mention about their certification courses also, but
No,
I'm
no, 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 no.
asking.
You didn't hear my question though. In the job description that you have this
Mhm.
resume for, did they call out whatever you're certified in?
Oh yeah. If we have to mention that, then should we mention there like under which section we should put it, like how it's gonna work? That's what I'm asking. For example,
Yeah, no,
to
no, no. I got
clarify.
what you're asking. I got what you're asking. But the point that I'm trying to make, Pooja, that I don't think you caught, is that the answer is all dependent on the job description. So if they highlighted it
Okay.
saying that they needed it, then that even determines where in the resume you're putting it.
Oh, I got you. My
Make
apologies.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
sure.
that's why you notice where I went directly into the audience again. Remember how we started this earlier about the considerations? It's always about your reader. So, and you notice how with your question, I went directly to from the job description, Pooja, is it required? If it's not required, then it should be at the really bottom. Or kind of like to Eduardo's case, he just put interests out there, but he said it was kind of like for general info right now. So it doesn't even really need to be there. Remember, you guys said that these hiring managers are very busy, so you don't want to waste their quote unquote reading time. Give them the relevant information sooner versus later. So good question. Did you get anything out of that answer, Pooja?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Bernie.
Beautiful, beautiful. Eduardo, any final questions on this before I give Ariba a little bit of airtime? I know you and I are going to work on this some more offline, but just so you know, we give some airtime to Ariba. Did you have any final questions, Eduardo?
I don't have any final questions. I do want to let everyone else have a chance to see their resumes.
Yeah, but we could tell the difference between night and day. We're obviously not going through this with a fine tooth comb, but I think you got some nuggets already. And I love how you change some of this based on the discussions that we've had and some of the research that you've done with the material. So nice work.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk about this offline. And Ariba, your turn for this call. Do what? Yes, slowly scroll down, and then we'll get first impressions. Same thing that we did, Ariba, with Eduardo's. So in Ariba's case, she doesn't have actual work experience. So she kind of like put the research assistant for Illinois Institute. And then there were projects, to Mohammed's point earlier, that you could talk about projects as experience, which Ariba took full advantage of. Can you scroll down even further to the end, please? And publication, nice. So you had an extra. So to Pooja's question earlier about certificates, if I really wanted to like have that in the resume that we have, I would put it more towards the bottom, kind of like Ariba has her publication right now. So opening the floor to general comments right now. No general comments? I love the clean lines. It's kind of easy to read. Do you know what font this is, Ariba? Can't tell.
So
Can't tell
I
from this
made
because
this.
it's a PDF, right?
So I made this resume on latex. So I don't
Okay.
actually know what font is it.
Just FYI, it's a personal preference, but students called it out with me when I saw it. Try to see how you like Calibri.
Okay.
Okay, just play with that. I like the clean lines. I liked how you kind of went through the template. So question for you, well, I'm kind of giving comments already. I want to give opportunity to the other students to say something. Eduardo or Pooja or Mohammed.
I have a comment.
Go
I
ahead.
also like how spacious things look.
Mm,
And especially quite a stark difference from mine. But
Mhm.
I also noticed that you have a lot of what you did for each one of your points. For example, research assistant, you mentioned that what you're doing there, conducting posterior and density analysis, right? You're mentioning what you're doing for the person you're researching for, whatever you are doing, but then you're also not mentioning how you help this company or what you're doing to make a difference for this company.
Okay, so I guess to put it in terms that we've just had so far with this discussion is she kind of like described what she had, but she doesn't have, you kind of said that what she did for the company, which is actually the results. So I think what you're calling out is we're missing some of the results that could possibly be there. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Cool. Other comments? No other comments?
I guess I want to say that I like how technical it gets at points. I've personally had issues just realizing that the technicality of a resume sometimes gives it substance because it shows what you're doing and it shows that you know what you're talking about.
Mhm. Beautiful. Nice comment.
Yeah. And it's short and crisp. So even I like the way she has made the points very short and crisp.
Short and crisp. Very good. Mohammed? Or no comment?
No, I don't have anything. Like everything Eduardo and Pooja mentioned, like it's
Okay.
good to go.
Ariba, you'll relate to this. As a person who goes through resumes a lot, I don't know if you notice skills, it's a different size from education and experience. FYI, I
You
don't know if
mean
my eyes are playing a trick on me.
you mean the header?
Headers, yes. Skills
Yeah.
seems smaller than education and experience. So something for you to check out.
Okay.
And then you followed what we were saying earlier. Students are very good in following the template, and the template that we usually have is exactly what you have out here. So here's my first question. If Ariba were having a one-on-one with me, is this a general resume, or do you have a particular job that you had in mind for this resume, Ariba?
It's a general resume.
Okay. So, oh, you were going to say something else?
No, actually, the thing is that in my field, the job descriptions are usually around how it's usually around material characterization, mechanical testing. It's all about working on materials. So I just
Mhm.
made a general resume that includes everything so
Mhm.
that it can fit into every job description, because we don't usually work on different things as compared to IT students and other majors. That's why.
Okay. So what I would invite you to do, Ariba, so that we could do this is, again, back to the point that we made earlier. When you're writing a resume, it's from the perspective of the reader. What I heard you just say is this is a general resume that is meant or designed to hopefully relate to a bunch of people with different things. So you have a little of this, a little of this, a little of this to be general, and your hope is that somebody relates to this. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, the reality of that, and I'm coming from the business world, because what applies to jobs also applies to like people in the entrepreneur world. People are in the same boat if they're running a business, and that they kind of put a little of everything, hoping that they relate to somebody in those different groups. So the recommendation is specializing in a particular niche, if you will, makes you more directed in what you're saying. Therefore, your target audience, so to speak, relates more closely than a something that was put together to relate to a whole bunch of people. What did you get out of that?
Sorry, can you repeat?
When you go general versus very specific and targeted, our hope is usually that we relate to a lot of people and that we're crossing our fingers that somebody will call on us because we try to relate to a whole bunch of people. You got that part, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you said you're doing with this resume. The premise that I'm trying to introduce to you is, in order to be efficient, and this is what we're talking about earlier, we always need to keep the reader in mind. Your reader for this resume seems to be like a whole bunch of people. So from the standpoint of being effective, you're not really effective because you're trying to put a little of this, a little of this, a little of this, a little of this. The recommendation I'm giving to you is, have you ever thought of creating a resume? Well, a good exercise for you is to pick a job description for a job that you truly want, and then create a resume that kind of like checks everything in that job description that relates to you. From the standpoint of being effective, instead of sending them this general resume, I'm actually tailoring my resume to what they were looking for. I like to call the job description an open book test, because they already told you everything that they're looking for. So if you, as the job seeker, take a look at their open book and you match everything in your experience to what they say they wanted, guess what? When they take a look at Ariba's resume, they go like, holy cow, Ariba's the perfect match for what we're looking for. Duh. Of course it's a perfect match because he matched it on purpose.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Did you get anything out of that?
Yes.
And what could you do if you got anything out of it?
I would tailor my resume according to each job description so that it matches
Yes.
perfectly.
Yes. So for practice for you, Ariba, I would look for a job description for something that you truly want, and then let's you and I work on like matching that to that effect. So, but here's the reality, okay? You guys don't have 24 hours to match each and every resume to each and every job description that you have. So there's some truth about what you did and trying to be general, but I'm saying strike a balance. You don't have 24 hours to tailor each resume, but I want you to make it look like you tailored it to the job description. Do you see that as a difference from what you have right now?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Questions?
actually did make I have seen few of my job description that does not require technical skills, but they require more organizational and communication skills. So I
Mhm.
made another resume that has more leadership skills than academic projects so that it's more relevant to the job description.
Assuming they're looking for leadership.
Yeah, they have the job description and the responsibilities. The qualifications mostly requires having organization and communication skills. So
Okay.
that's what I added.
Yeah. Again, Pooja, kind of like to the point that we made earlier. Did you notice how I gravitated to
Yeah,
that comment? And I said,
that's
what
true.
are they looking for?
Totally agree
It's,
with you.
it's always about them. Okay. So hopefully if there's anything that you get out of today's session, I'm hoping that that's it.
Okay.
I realize that we're 3 minutes into the top of the hour, which means we're closely done with this. Here's my recommendation to Eduardo. Eduardo knows this because he and I already have done it. But Ariba, make some changes to this based on what you got out of the discussion today. And I think Mohammed did the same thing because he probably sent me the link, right, Mohammed?
Yeah, I have shared.
Okay, so I'm just going to share the process that we like to do. After you incorporate your changes, and we kind of like want to go, we're probably going to have another resume workshop for next week, but different students have different timelines as to when they want their resume done. So I guess that's when I take it offline and we kind of like work with you closer. So if and when we go to that, I request that you make a Google Docs, a Docs version, send me the editable link of the fresh resume after you've made changes. So Ariba, for example, I'm going to invite you to find a job description that you want, create a resume that's tailored to that. So you get to practice it and then
Okay.
send me the editable link of that. So you want to get my first impression and then we start iterating like that, but we don't have to go through this. We kind of like just go back and forth through Google Docs. I make comments, you make changes, you send me a fresh copy, get my first impression, I make comments, you know what I'm saying? We
So
iterate the
you're
process.
gonna send me a job description. I have to tailor
No,
it.
no, no, I want you to take it. I don't know what you want,
Oh, okay.
right? So I
Okay.
want you to go into job descriptions of something that you want, that you truly want to apply to. And as practice, I want you to modify this thing that you just shared with us right now. Practice tailoring it to that audience, and then send me the editable link to that. I'm inviting Ariba to do this much, much quicker because she just graduated and she needs a job like yesterday. So just
So I
FYI
have
as to what we do. Go ahead.
So I have for example, if I'm looking for a job and I find a job that's really interesting, but
Mhm.
I don't have specific experience in it. So what should I do with my resume then?
You don't have specific experience into it. You highlight, you go through the job description, and if there is any possibility that you did this skill or that material or whatever, you try to, because obviously you can't lie, right?
Yeah.
So you try to tailor it as closely as possible that aligns with your experience. And that's what your resume looks like. The other option is don't apply for that job.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, the other option that I haven't mentioned, Ariba, is Mohammed kind of made this point earlier, where you can talk about projects. So even to your point, what if you went to school and you didn't have a project specifically as to what they're looking for? Then you can create a project right now is the other option. But we can talk about that at another session, or send me a message directly and we can address that for you.
Okay.
Any final questions, Ariba?
No, that's it.
Okay, final questions, Eduardo?
No questions from my end.
Thank you guys for volunteering for today, and thank you for attending Pooja and Mohammed. Mohammed, I realize it's past midnight out there, so it's probably too late for you, but I was just gonna say I have an opening in about 2 hours. Otherwise, I'll just make comments on your resume, so look out for it, okay?
Sure.
Final comments from this team? Thank you so much for your attention, everybody. I think, how many of you four would be interested in another one next week?
Yeah, I would love to join.
Okay, good. So I guess we'll just copy. I'll probably keep the same time and channel for next week unless I have some something going on, but this is all about your need. So stay tuned.
Same
Thank
here.
you again.
I would be interested too.
Fantastic. Thank you guys for today. We will see you on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Bernie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Let's talk again soon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yep.